Pisapia, and this is the place. If you want to dominate in all of your endeavors, we've got you covered. Season-long fantasy, DFS, straight-up wagering, whatever it is, right here. Reminder, at SportsGrid TV. Those are our social media handles for those that are new to the show or perhaps you've lapsed. I promise you, you're going to want to give us a follow because I'm about to turn it over to the man that wrote the book, literally. The author of the Black Book series, the one and only Joey P. It is time to talk baseball, my friend. Baseball, my friend. Baseball, my friend. Hello.
If you say it 3 times in the mirror, it comes true, I hear. And yes, the book right there. Boom. Look at that. Shameless promotion right behind my beautiful bald head. Matt Striker, it's baseball 2 weeks in a row around these parts. Of course, there'll be NFL draft in the weeks ahead, but that's still weeks away. We got the combine this week. Next week, we'll recap some of that. But let's talk baseball, and we've got breaking news at the top. So in case you're wiping the crust out your eye, you're getting up, getting that first cup of coffee, we've got a signing in Major League Baseball. We've been teasing about it for the last week or so, and that means that obviously the people listen to the show. Jeff Passan reporting that Cody Bellinger will be back with the Chicago Cubs. Matt, isn't this what we said last week? We said the Cubs need him more than anybody. Bellinger needs the Cubs. It's a perfect marriage of need. It is a good-sized contract, maybe a slight overpay, but that's what the market's all about, especially when it comes to Boris guys. So it is a free agent contract, 3 years, $80 million. That seems fair. Maybe they're paying a little bit higher annual value. Okay. It's a shorter deal. It's only 3 years as opposed to like a 5-year deal. So I think if you're the Cubs, you like this deal. You like it because it's a 3-year deal, because there has been some negative in the past with Cody Bellinger's performance. It was all positive in Chicago. 2020 guy. Everybody was very excited. The Cubs, I think, can really compete for that division. If Shoto Imanaga and Justin Steele pitch their capabilities, the Cubs could win that division. I keep looking around, Matt, and I'm looking for wagering in that NL Central, and I've been putting some things together, and I keep coming back to the Cubs, but I keep waiting because I'm waiting for Cody Bellinger. Now that that's happened, I want to pounce on those odds. I want to move forward with that because I look at the age of the St. Louis Cardinals rotation. I look at the lack of depth in Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. Can I really depend on those guys as exciting as they are? There's a lot of questions in the National League Central. To me, the Cody Bellinger signing, it's answered a big question. Your thoughts on Cody B coming back with Chicago?
First and foremost, he loves when you call him Cody B, by the way. I know that on record. So here's the thing. I think it helps a lot of people if you're doing any mock drafts and you came across Cody Bellinger in an ideal spot. There has to be a part of you that was just like, where is he going to play? What's the lineup going to look? A lot of questions are answered here, and it kind of calms the waters, definitely. Big time. Yes, that division is winnable for that ball club. You can look at them from a myriad of ways from a wagering perspective. You look at Bellinger from a fantasy perspective and look at him also as he is, because Joe always talks about the transparency is, I think that if you're chasing last year, you should temper those expectations and then be delighted as opposed to chase that and be disappointed. That would be the way that I would go with that. But overall, I just think it's good for the sanity of all of us. Joe?
It is. And also looking right now at the odds, I see over on FanDuel, you can get the Cubs at plus 210 to win this division. The Reds are at plus 430. The Brewers at plus 550. Now, the Brewers are interesting because some of that younger pitching, if Woodruff comes back healthy at some point halfway through the season, we'll see what kind of bump they get. Peralta's going to be the lead guy now, so that's a new role for him. I love the Brewers, but, there's a lot of questions there. And then, of course, the Pirates at the bottom at plus 1,600. At the top is still the Cardinals at plus 145. But, just listening to my friend and Cardinal fan, Matt Striker, talk about the Cardinals a week ago, I don't know. It's a little rough there with that rotation after Sonny Gray. What are you going to get out of Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn and some of these other names? It's a lot of questions. The Cubs are in a really interesting situation right now. This was what they needed to do. Now, deficit-wise, the one thing I can say, it's going to probably eat into Michael Bush's playing time a little, Christopher Morel's playing time. So if you have those guys in your fantasy teams or on your board to draft, understand this Cody Bellinger signing is going to take some at-bats away from them. So that's an important thing. But on to the headlines, because it's more than just Cody Bellinger. Shohei Ohtani taking live BP this week. That's a good thing for everybody worried about his I can't say Tommy John because he didn't have Tommy John. His mysterious elbow surgery. Ooh, Shohei Ohtani's mysterious elbow surgery. What was it? Nobody knows.
Floyd? Who is that?
I don't know.
He's
I
the
don't
guy
know.
from
That's exactly the way
SCTV.
the doctor looked when he went into the surgery that day. If it even was a surgery. Ooh. All right, let's continue on
But
here.
why is he
Gleyber
evil?
Torres,
I want the
this is
doctor to
what
have good
happens.
intent.
Matt, this is what happens when you get me up too early in the morning. I just want you to know this is, that extra half hour sleep is gone now. So forget it. Gleyber Torres, apparently set for a free agency, but wants to be a Yankee for life. But isn't this what the Yankees do? They always let their free agents walk and then say, okay, kid, see what you get on the open market. Aaron Judge did this. Arson Judge also did it. They both came back to the Yankees. Brian Bayo is in talks with the Red Sox about a contract extension. This would make a lot of sense. The Red Sox are turning things over. Gone is Chris Sale. They bring in Giolito, Brian Bayo. These are the guys who are going to try to build this rotation around. And then Byron Buxton wants to steal 30 bases this season. That sounds great, except you'd have to play,
So do I.
probably around 60 games.
Okay, it looks like the fact that Byron Buxton wants to steal 30 bases has caused a ripple in the universe. But I think it's something that could be understood because if you look at Buxton and you look at the lineup as we get Joe back, as he shakes it off, saying that Buxton wants to steal 30 is great. We all do. But if he has Kepler hitting behind him, who's a lefty, I could see it happening. The intent is there. He just has to be on the field, as you were beginning to say.
Yeah, as I was beginning to say. But Byron Buxton, again, being on the field is not something, unfortunately, you've been used to when it comes to Byron Buxton. It's a very difficult fantasy investment. I understand it's tantalizing, the power, the speed, and the speed kind of, it's funny, in 2024 where everybody was stealing more bases, it feels like Byron Buxton was the one guy who really wasn't. But injuries also limit his ability to steal those bases. So I think it's great to have intentions. I have intentions to grow hair back on my head too. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. So Byron Buxton, everybody in spring training, this is what they do, Matt. They start throwing out these things. I want to do this. I want to do that. That's fine. Gleyber Torres, he's coming off an outstanding year, his best in several seasons. To me, look, I understand the Yankees' point of view, which is they want to, wait and see here, see how the Soto thing plays out, make sure they're not committing too much money on the books. But Torres, to me, seems like a piece that the Yankees can ill afford to lose. What are your thoughts on this whole Yankee Gleyber Torres thing that's bubbling up?
1,000% agree, more than ever now, especially with this whole entire, we'll talk about it, maintenance on Judge's toe. What does that mean? Because if you remember what this lineup looks like without Judge in it, I get it, you have Soto in there now. You need someone else to hit. Torres has to be that guy. Volpe is not there yet. I just don't think anyone else is coming around the corner for them. So go.
Yeah, Brian Bayo, too, another piece that I think is very interesting. We'll talk more about him and some other pieces as the show goes on. But we're going to start with the leaderboards and how you can make some money and make some good fantasy investments when we return on FS3.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Soriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It felt during the year that there was a little bit of disconnect with Wilkes and Kyle Shanahan. The total points allowed by Steve Wilkes' defense the last 3 years before this, head coach for the Cardinals, they gave up the 26th most points. Defensive coordinator for the Browns, 20th most points. And then Carolina, they gave up the 19th most points.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in FST Fantasy Sports Today. My name's Matt Striker. His name's Joe Pisapia. We're giving you everything you need to dominate, whether it's season-long fantasy, DFS, straight-up wagering, whatever you need, this is the place. We're talking baseball right now, and it's smarter to be here, right? It's smarter on SportsGrid because we look ahead. That's the thing. So looking at the futures, we've put together a fantastic early look at the home run leaders. Now, I understand it's for all of Major League Baseball. So this is not just AL or NL. And this is where it's fun. And Joe, I love having these conversations with you. So let's stretch our legs a little bit. There's some obvious discussions here, but the numbers are the language. So set it up for us. Here we go.
Well, what's fun about this discussion, right, is we always like to overlap wagering, fantasy. It's all together, right? And the evaluation of the players. So we're going to talk about projections. We're going to talk about some historical data. We're going to also talk about the odds. So everything coming in together and evaluating the player. The first one we're going to talk about when it comes to leading the league in home runs is Aaron Judge. It's a guy at the top of the board for a good reason. Plus 380 is the consensus number right now. Most sports books you can get for this MLB future. 37 home runs last year and some limited action in 23. He's going in an ADP, currently an average draft position of 9 overall, which feels about right. Now, I just had a discussion yesterday, actually, on a show with my buddy Jason Collette, who's a great baseball guy, and we were talking about Juan Soto or Aaron Judge. And both of us are of the mind that we'd rather have Soto than Judge. They're going practically back-to-back in ADP. You can flip-flop them any given day. But the Aaron Judge news about the toe being something that he would have to have constant maintenance on for the rest of his career, that's troubling, not just from a wagering standpoint here on this number, because, again, he has to get the games played in order to get that total to the projected Fantasy Pros total of 46, which is what Aaron Judge's projected home run total is. Just for reference on that home run total, too, 46 would have finished second in 2022 in this number of leading league in home runs. In 2023, he would have finished somewhere around third, tied for third with Pete Alonso at 46. So if he reaches projections, he's going to put himself in that conversation. But part of that projection is games played, of getting to that 150-ish kind of number. And that could be the struggle. And it's not taking into account some of the other injuries Judge has had over his career. You can't plan for injuries, but you also don't have to invest in them either. And I guess this is the point when it comes to Aaron Judge. Can he do this? Of course he can. He's Aaron Judge. He's led the league in home runs before. He's a guy capable of hitting 60 home runs, maybe even 70. However, I think the bigger question you have to ask yourself is, when you're making investments on him, am I going to get those 150 games? And if you're talking about a first-round selection or a top 10 pick between Juan Soto and Aaron Judge, especially in head-to-head formats and fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto. Your thoughts on Soto versus Judge in fantasy, Matt, but also investing in this pretty good number of Aaron Judge, but is it a bit of fool's gold?
Great setup. Why you asking me about fool's gold, huh? What do you mean? Well, I'm a fool. All right, so here's the thing.
Maybe.
We started out talking about home run leaders in MLB, right? So I want to focus on that. To answer your question, Judge or Soto, listen, this whole toe thing, this thing scares me. You're saying 150 games, over under on total games played, Aaron Judge? Give me the under and I'll pay minus money for it. I don't think he's playing 150 games. I think it makes a world of difference now. Soto's a much different ball player. You're drafting him for what? For runs scored? I mean, well, what are you trying to do? OBP leagues? So it's a much different conversation. But about Judge leading the majors in home runs, now you've got the issue with the toe. Let me ask you something. Who's going to hit behind Judge? Rizzo? Gleyber Torres? We talked about him in the earlier segment, top of the show. I mean, you really need Verdugo. Like, what's the protection there to give Judge the opportunity to hit as many home runs as, say, a Matt Olson? There's a lot more. The prolific home run hitters that are healthy far outweigh the wager, the gamble on an Aaron Judge with a toe issue that needs maintenance with some questionable protection behind him. No, thank you. Joe.
Next guy on the list here is Matt Olson at plus 750. Now, Matt Olson hit 54 homers in 2023, led the league. His current ADP is at 15, and I can make an argument, and I probably will, he's the number one first baseman off the board. A lot of people still put Freddie Freeman because of the batting average, but I'm looking at Matt Olson and what he did last year. And Freeman also, Freeman will give you those steals last year, but I don't know if that's something we can buy into every single year. Freddie Freeman's been around a long time. As you get older, I think you're more, I would say, or should I say less apt perhaps to be running around the bases that much. There's a lot of investments in this Dodger team, but all jokes aside, I don't know if those 20 steals are something you could really bank on when it comes to Freddie Freeman in 2024. Instead, I'd rather have the 30 more home runs that Matt Olson hit over Freddie Freeman. But again, that's my preference. That's how I want to build. I can find stolen bases in 2024 easier than I can find those extra 30 home runs. So Matt Olson last year led the league in home runs. He was also top 3 in slugging. He slugged last year, Matt, 604. To me, you're looking at some of the best wagers you can make on the board right now in Major League Baseball. I don't know how this isn't one of them. Matt Olson is an absolute stud. He's a slugger. He is in a situation with a great lineup. Guys get on in front of him. You've got Albies, you've got Acuna, you got Austin Riley. The troubles you were talking about the length of the Yankee lineup, the Braves don't have those problems, folks. No. So Matt Olson, to me, I can't believe we're getting this number. Almost 7.5 to 1 is the consensus. Give me Matt Olson for this award. That's where I want to put my money. I've already bet it. I'm already investing in him in fantasy. Your thoughts on Matt Olson potentially leading the league in home runs 2 years in a row?
I'll race you to the window. I mean, I'm with you all day long. When you want to talk lineup protection, you could see guys like Ozuna or Michael Harris hitting behind Olson, giving him that protection, and that's the big difference. I will say here on this show that Matt Olson is one of the 2 or 3 best home run hitters in baseball, and I don't think it's a hot take. I think it's Olson, I think it's Yordan Alvarez. Day over day, the betting on baseball, wagering on baseball is a war of attrition, but day over day, if you want to go to just one play a day, home run prop for Matt Olson, home run prop for Yordan Alvarez would probably be on most days the air quote, earmuffs, bad word, safest play of the day. I really like Olson. I really like these numbers, and I like all the insulation that's there as well, Joe.
I love what you put out there, too, because if he does hit 50 home runs again, that's basically, a third of the time you're going to be right. So if you keep investing in it in good situations, that's going to be a nice return for you because those numbers are usually 3-4 to 1 to hit a home run in any given evening. Let's continue on here with Pete Alonso. Last year hit 46 home runs, ADP of 26, the average draft position for him. He is plus 850 to win this award. Now, Pete Alonso's in a contract year. He doesn't have a lot of line of protection. Little bit of a tough situation there. However, I will say this about Pete Alonso. If you go back to his rookie season, huge home run total, broke the rookie record. He's a guy that is willing to sacrifice some of the batting average for home runs, especially when you're hitting a free agent year and those home runs get you paid. So consider that of Pete Alonso, but I'd still rather take Olson. Both are projected around the 40 range. I think Alonso around 40 makes sense. I think it's too low when it comes to Matt Olson. He should be closer to 46 or 47 on that projection. Right. And lastly, one of the few guys to have a better slugging percentage last year than Matt Olson, Shohei Ohtani. Let's not forget about him. He had 44 home runs in an incomplete season last year. The ADP is 12. He just has to hit this year. He led the league in slugging at 654. Matt, plus 1,000 on Ohtani. Should this be the hedge when it comes to this Matt Olson wager?
It can be, but it's just going to take in so much public money. Ohtani and Judge are going to drain the handle here, and we want to be smart here, and that's why I still lean Olson, Joe.
All right, when you're looking at some of these guys, too, in terms of investments, it's hard to argue with any of them, but to me, again, Matt Olson is the best value on the board. The ADP, I think he's a little too low. He's a first-round talent going in the second round. You should be taking advantage of that in every single draft you have, especially those of which where you're playing those corner infield spots where you have to have that extra corner or in deeper leagues. The power of Matt Olson over the overall productivity of Freddie Freeman, that's the way I'm going in 2024. We come back, we're going to take a look at who could be the hit leaders in Major League Baseball, what it means for your wallet, and what it means for your fantasy team when we return on SportsGrid.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Soriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It felt during the year that there was a little bit of disconnect with Wilks and Kyle Shanahan. The total points allowed by Steve Wilks' defense the last 3 years before this, head coach for the Cardinals, they gave up the 26th most points, defensive coordinator for the Browns, 20th most points, and then Carolina, they gave up the 19th most points.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Striker and Joe Pisapia continuing the discussion, looking forward to the baseball season. We've been doing some futures, prognostications, some thoughts and predictions to get you ahead of the wagering game, and already social media blowing up at SportsGrid and at SportsGrid TV. A lot of people appreciate, Joe, when we give the early picks, because when you look back, the numbers will never be as good as they are today, barring some type of landscape shifter, if you will. So when we're looking at futures, and in this segment, it'll be regular season MLB hit leaders, we're talking about numbers of 8-1, 7.5-1, 10-1, 18-1. So we have to really be smart and try not to get too out of control with these big numbers, because we don't want to go into the season down. With that said, Joe, when you think about an MLB hit leader, does it automatically have to be a leadoff guy, or can it be a guy hitting in the 2-hole?
It certainly helps to have a guy hitting at the top of the order. Those extra at-bats do make a difference, but again, it makes a difference when you're a top-notch hitter. And kind of like that last segment too, I think it's good to maybe hone in on two guys that you're really looking at. I think in that first one, when it comes to home runs, it's the Matt Olson plus 750, and then the Shohei Ohtani 10-1 that I'm most interested in. And those are two guys that I'm very willing to take at the end of the first round. Shohei Ohtani is lasting somewhere around the 10th to even 12th player overall, because some people just don't want to lock him into their DH or utility spot, to which I say, what are you, crazy? You know the productivity you're going to get out of Shohei Ohtani, and maybe there's less risk this year because he is not going to be pitching. So he's probably going to play more games, believe it or not, get more at-bats than maybe he ever has. They're paying him for those at-bats. So the Dodgers are going to get those at-bats out of Shohei Ohtani this year. But when you're switching over to the hit king for 2024, you have to start with the hit king of 2023. And his name is Ronald Acuna, the guy who led the league last year in hits. He is the top of the board. He is the 1-1 in average draft position in all fantasy leagues, as he should be. And maybe the most stunning statistic when it comes to Ronald Acuna, Matt, he's just 26 years old. I mean, sometimes that's a very sobering thing to sit back and look at how old a player is. Ronald Acuna's been around a while. He is only 26 years old, and if you look at what he did last year, 217 hits was the number. He led the league in hits. He had more hits than Freddie Freeman. He had more hits than Luis Ariz, who we're going to talk about in a second here for this award. But if you look at last year, he also was at 337 in the batting average. Can he repeat this magical 2023 season? It's probably unlikely, because it was so good when you're stealing, 70 bases. It's like, when you're hitting 40 home runs and stealing 70 bases, something has really changed for the positive in Major League Baseball in terms of some of the rules and situations. But that's a great thing for the game, because more offense is good. People want to see offense. And Ronald Acuna is living, breathing, walking offense. I think it's a very good wager still, because the number is still good at plus 750, because this is really about threading the needle. This particular future is about a guy who's going to be durable, a guy who's going to be productive, a guy who probably has some speed too, is going to get some infield hits, a guy that doesn't slump. So you have to kind of have the perfect storm here for everything to work to get this future right. And I think at plus 750, it's just too good of an odd not to go back to the favorite here, Ronald Acuna, for a second year in a row, because he fits the bill in all those things. And as we mentioned before, in the last segment, the lineup protection is there too. And that is something that is also crucial, I think, at the end of the day, to get this right. Your thoughts on Ronald Acuna going back-to-back hit kings in 2023 and 2024?
I think it's a great number, returning 7.5-1. You can't pitch to him. You can't pitch around him. So what do? And you mentioned something that I don't want to gloss over, the speed. So some of the guys hitting in the 2-hole, I would look for those guys that are speedy, that can get those infield hits to make up for not leading off. You add in this fact that Ronald Acuna has the speed for the infield hit and hitting leadoff. It just needs to be half a hit more. It needs to be one more than everyone else in the entire league for this to cash. And to your point, complete, has all the tools. Conversations we're going to have about the rest of these players are there, and you can put together a nice ticket. But at the end of the day, you just need one. It's Acuna at plus 750. Joe.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's crazy not to at least put a unit on this. And he is the 1-1. There's no discussion this year, I think, about that. And look, we've seen that happen before, where it's obviously a guy and then unfortunate circumstances happen. He's 26 years old, folks. I mean, we haven't even entered the prime years of Ronald Acuna. That's a scary thought for the rest of the league. The next guy on this list is Luis Ariz, who flirted with 400 last year, one of Matt's favorite guys. But the speed isn't quite the same as Ronald Acuna. 70 less stolen bases, just in case you're keeping score at home. Last year, he had 203 hits for the Marlins. Again, flirting with 400 is not something you see very often in Major League Baseball. He did fall eventually well shy of 400, ended up at 354, still pretty good. He did win the batting title last year. He beat out Acuna's 337. But Ariz is going as player 124. Now, when it comes to Luis Ariz, here's the thing. This is a player that doesn't score a ton of runs for the amount of times he's on base with all these hits and all the contact he made. He doesn't give you stolen bases, and his power is below league average. He's going to hit somewhere around 9-10 home runs. So when you're trying to evaluate this player in season-long roto, to me, Ariz is a player that when you're trying to boost up your batting average, he's a good pick in this 125 range. But if you're looking for complete players, I think it's a little bit tougher. I think you're talking about looking at some of the other names. You've got guys like, Lane Thomas, who had better overall productivity. You've got some guys in there that are going to have more power, like, for instance, guys like Spencer Torkelson.
Everyone.
So, well, pretty much everyone. But I think that's the thing where you're starting to evaluate Ariz as a fantasy player. It becomes again, he becomes more of a batting average marvel. In head-to-head points, those hits pile up, and it does help you. But I think sometimes in those season-long rotos, Ariz is a player that's slightly overvalued here at the ADP of 124. But what do you like about the odds here, if anything, plus 800? Pretty close to Acuna. But to me, Acuna is the far better wager. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I remember the conversation. Regular season hit leader across Major League Baseball. So what do we need? We need a guy at the top of the order. Great, there he is. Guy with speed to get those extra little infield hits. We just discussed that Ariz does not have that where Acuna does. Now, here's the thing. A hit is a hit is a hit. Tim Anderson is on this team and Jazz Chisholm is on this team as well. I can definitely see some type of iteration or some type of lineup juggling goes on or some things happen here or there. So Ariz is volatile. Is he the one guy that you would want in a situation? Yeah, he's a throwback. He's Tony Gwynn, Wade Boggs-esque for our older viewers. But to the point, Acuna brings more tools. Remember what the wager is. The wager is regular season hit leader. Hits. Acuna's going to have more than Ariz.
All right, the next guy on our list is probably about as consistent as it gets, Freddie Freeman. So I wasn't bashing Freddie Freeman last segment, everybody. I love Freddie Freeman, one of my favorite players in Major League Baseball. And for this award, I think it's a really good investment. We're talking about plus 1,000 for Freddie Freeman. Last year, 211 hits. He is in a great lineup. He is at the top of this lineup. He is a guy that is so steady, and the Dodgers have a lot of expectations. He's also a player that I think that you feel really good about making an investment early on in fantasy. As you can see, that ADP sitting at 7 overall. I would prefer the power, but I get it. Everybody wants to build rosters differently. Freddie Freeman, equally good, equally worthy of a first-round selection along with Matt Olson. However, when it comes to this award, we have to have this conversation, right? So 211 hits for him last season. Matt, I know the Dodgers have just an absolute ridiculous amount of expectations. They seem to have that every year, so I don't think it's going to weigh on Freddie Freeman necessarily. When you start to look at what he's done in the last few years, 212 hits, 198, 180. So he really has started to peak here in the last 2 years. Do you think there's any regression potentially coming? Because that's a very high level to sustain.
Absolutely. But the lineup now, the confidence, let's not talk about the expectations of the team. Let's talk about, again, within the parameters of the segment. Hit leader, regular season hit leader. Freddie Freeman may very well be the most educated hitter, but he's not the most talented hitter with physical ability. I saw a great thing with Freddie Freeman. You know, the lines in the batter's box. Freddie Freeman was discussing how to keep your hands inside the lines when trying to drive a baseball or go to all these intricate things that I'm not so certain you'll hear some of the younger players really talking about. So I like his maturity and his wisdom. And if I'd have to take a second play, it would be on to Freddie Freeman, but it still remains Acuna for me. Joe.
Another interesting guy, too, a little further down this list at plus 1,800 is Bobby Witt Jr., going somewhere on the top 3 picks in fantasy right now. The current ADP for him is 3. Usually it's Cunha, it's Mookie Betts, Bobby Witt. That's kind of where we're looking at right now. But even though he hit just 276 last year, he still had 177 hits. And I feel like there's another gear coming in Bobby Witt that we haven't seen yet that could make him really interesting this year. You mentioned before we started the show today, if Pasquantino in the middle of that order gives him some more lineup protection, who knows? We could be looking at MVP caliber Bobby Witt. He's coming off a tremendous season where he drove in 96 runs, scored 97 runs, stole 49 bases, and hit 30 bombs. He could easily get to that 200 mark as well. And the last guy, my wager for MVP in the American League this year, Julio Rodriguez, plus 2,700. Now, he had 180 hits last year. He is going off currently as the sixth player off the board in fantasy. Matt, he had some real struggles in April and May last year. Second half, things took off for Julio Rodriguez. If he fixes that first half, I'm looking at this plus 2,700. I think it's Acuna and Julio Rodriguez. Those are the two most appealing wagers on the board. I would tell people right now, start making your Ronald Acuna wagers, start making your Julio Rodriguez wagers, because Julio is also 12-1 for MVP, and that Seattle Mariner rotation is great. It's deep, and that means wins. So if Julio is great on a great team with a great story, and the Mariners would be, it could be a lot of great money for you in fantasy. All right, when we come back, we're going to continue on with the pitchers on FST.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Soriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It felt during the year that there was a little bit of disconnect with Wilks and Kyle Shanahan. The total points allowed by Steve Wilks' defense the last 3 years before this, head coach for the Cardinals, they gave up the 26th most points, defensive coordinator for the Browns, 20th most points, and then Carolina, they gave up the 19th most points.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Striker and Joe Pisapia getting everyone ready for the upcoming Major League Baseball season. Whether it be from a season-long fantasy, DFS, or straight-up wagering perspective, don't worry, we've got you covered. So we've been looking at the futures. We've been looking at who's going to lead the majors in home runs. We had some really good discussions. And then that opened up the door to who's going to lead the majors in hits. Now let's turn to the other side because somebody's got to throw the ball. Joe, let's talk about who's going to lead the majors in strikeouts, because it seems to me that there are a few guys that are the cream of the crop, right? Head and shoulders above the rest, and then there are the rest. But this is such a volatile category because it takes one bad cold day, one something somewhere for someone to go, oops, I felt something. It used to be 4-letter words. Now it's 3 letters. UCL. You don't even want to say, or oblique. You hear that? But that could change everything. So we'll start at the obvious here. Spencer Strider, plus 180. I'll let you talk us through it from the obvious, and then we'll roll out. Go.
Well, when you get to my age and Matt's age, you just get up on a cold day and things just hurt anyway. I think that's pretty much the standard. Why does this hurt? I don't know. I didn't even do anything yesterday, but it hurts. Spencer Strider, obviously, as you can see, the first pitcher going off the board, ADP of 10 overall, which is still a little steep for me. I don't think there's any pitcher worthy of taking in the first round. That's just where I'm at right now. Garrett Cole's the safest one, safer than Spencer Strider, despite the absurd 281 strikeouts. Now, that's something we've seen in the past when we're talking about guys like Randy Johnson and Pedro Martinez, but those guys don't pitch anymore. What's so incredible is the strikeout rate, too. Yesterday he threw and he struck out some more guys in spring training. But you see the number here, plus 180. Matt, you talk about fading the top of the board sometimes, fading the public. It's just really tough. So if you like Strider, this is the time to get in on it because you're still in plus money at plus 180. Now, I can't say anything against what you saw out of Strider last year. He was crazy dominant, 20-5, 281 strikeouts in 186 innings. And that's the thing you come back to. So even if Spencer Strider were to miss some time, could he still win this? Let's say he only threw 150 innings. Could he still get to 240 strikeouts? Probably. And if he did, guess what, folks? He's probably still going to be at the top of that leaderboard or at least close to it. That, I think, becomes the struggle here when you're looking at this. So it is Strider and everybody else. I don't think it's the best wager you can make, but if you want to make a wager on Spencer Strider for leading the league in strikeouts, this is the best time to do it. The time to do it is now. As Matt said, you're getting early good numbers because people want action here on some of these stats, and I think this is the time to do it. Spencer Strider does make sense as the first pitcher off the board, but as I'm saying, the volatility of Strider, who increases regular season innings by 50 plus, not to mention postseason too. That's the first time he's gone over the 200. So sometimes you start to get back into the next season and you'll see a little bit of wear and tear. It's something we talked about with Zach Gallen last week, the 243 innings that he threw, by far the most he's ever thrown. And those are stress innings too. Those are those innings where they say it's like an inning and a half right in the playoffs because of the stress level of playoffs. So when it comes to Spencer Strider, again, if you like him for this is the time to do it. But Matt, what do you think? You want to be with me here? You want to fade the guy who is so dominant in this category last year? Or do you think this is a mistake?
Well, if you want to wager into this sector, or you want to wager in this sector, then let's talk about it like stocks. So there are stocks out there that are like Amazon, Google, Nvidia, where if you want to get in, you have to get in with a lot of capital in order to see a return. This isn't entry-level type stuff. So if you're going to wade into this wagering sector, that's what I was trying to get out, and you want to lay some capital on Spencer Strider, there are other ways to go. And if you're going to speculate, again, it's very early. I know it's a futures conversation, but I would hate to go into, I don't have to use that word, into May. Still not at the precipice of using their money. That's what this is about. I don't want to go by Memorial Day and still be using my money because then I'm going to be down. So when you look at something like this, outside of Strider, we're going to talk Gosman and a few others. Yeah, you can entice yourself. But to get in on something like this, Joe's right. Do it now, and you'd have to do it large. Joe?
Yeah, I'm looking at the strikeout rates from last year. The K per 9, Spencer Strider, off the charts, 13.5, right? That's a crazy number.
Next.
The guy who was next was Blake Snell at 11.7. But after that, Kevin Gausman at 11.53. Kevin Gausman was a guy in a stat of the day last week that we talked about, right? Since 2020, the major league leaders in strikeouts, Kevin Gausman was 4, right? So let's go back and take a look at Kevin Gausman's number. 237 strikeouts last year. Look at the number you're getting, though. Plus 750 for Kevin Gausman for this. Now, all I'm saying is it takes, as Matt was saying, one cold day in April or one start where all of a sudden something just doesn't feel right, and all of a sudden it's open season. So why not make an early wager right now on Kevin Gausman at this number? Because we all know that number is going to change dramatically if something happens to Spencer Strider, even in spring, which is sometimes we see guys, they go through dead arm, they go through fatigue, all of a sudden things change. All of a sudden these numbers get adjusted. Now, Kevin Gausman is a guy that, I just don't think gets enough credit. It's been a slow burn for him. Once upon a time, Kevin Gausman was one of the top pitching prospects in baseball with the Orioles, and it didn't work. They could not get it right. They kept bouncing in between the bullpen, between the rotation, between the minor leagues, between the major leagues. And eventually he had to move on. And the Giants, God bless the Giants, they got him right. He's gone to Toronto. He's been tremendous in Toronto. He's the reason why Toronto has a real shot to challenge for this American League East. I love this. And I'm looking at him right now, again, the 23rd player going off the board over on Fantasy Pros Consensus ADP. He is the 6th pitcher going off the board. But I got to tell you, Matt, I feel pretty good about Kevin Gausman being the number 2 pitcher going off the board. That's how confident I am in him. Plus 750. To me, this is a much more interesting wager. Not to mention in salary cap drafts, people are going to go crazy for Spencer Strider, right? Because he's that number 1 pitcher on the board.
Mm-hmm.
Why not wait a little bit, save a couple bucks, put him in your pocket, and take Kevin Gausman instead? Your thoughts?
I like Gausman a lot. I definitely can get on the bandwagon if we're throwing out the chalk. If we throw out the chalk of Strider, then there is a conversation to be made for Gausman. But again, it's just I caution you. Well, how come Hunter Green isn't in this conversation? Like, you could throw anyone in there essentially, but when we're trying to find that angle, that little crevice where we can make that good positive money, Joe is right. Again, I feel like I'm going to be saying that as I often do. Because one little mistake, one little something, and if you remove Strider from the board, then you go to the usual suspects. People don't realize what Gausman, especially his strikeout to walk ratio, that's when it really started to show itself. It wasn't last season, it was the season before, where the K to walk really started to stand out. I mean, it was extraordinary. It was like 30-2. It was ridiculous. We were talking about it. So Gausman now enters the conversation, as does this next guy that I think will take a lot of public money, but it's a lot of safe money as well, and it's returning a decent number as well. I'll let you set it up, John.
Yeah, Garrett Cole's the next guy. But to answer your question about Hunter Green, the reason why Hunter Green can't be in this discussion for this award is because he's inefficient. Because when you are giving up too many home runs, when you are not efficient with your pitches,
just about strikeouts.
Yeah, you can strike out everybody, but you're only a 5-inning pitcher. That's a problem. You're never going to get the amount of batters faced. A guy like Kevin Gausman, you just nailed it, right? Why is Gausman a guy you love for this award? Because the strikeout to walk ratio, because he doesn't put runners on. He's going to go 7-8 innings. Exactly. And I think that's the big difference here when you're talking about these guys. Next guy on the list is Garrett Cole. And look, the number 2 pitcher on the board, 13th overall in average draft position, 222 strikeouts last year. He's another guy. If you look at the K per 9 ratio, it's all the way down at 9.56. And you're saying, well, that's still really good. And it is, but it was only the 15th best in Major League Baseball last year. 15th. So at 12-1, yeah, it seems really good, but it also is very public. How Garrett Cole gets to the top of this mountain, folks, is just by being Garrett Cole and by taking the ball every 5th day and being one of the most dependable, reliable, quality starting pitchers in baseball. That's how he gets there. So for me, I'm still going with Kevin Gausman. Of these 3 guys, I think it's the best wager on the board, but you can make the case for Garrett Cole because he is so steady, because he is going to give you that good performance pretty much every 5th day for the Yankees, and he is coming off that Cy Young award. So even though the K per 9 rate is a little lower than some of the other guys on this list we're going to talk about, at the same time, you can absolutely see why Garrett Cole is still in this conversation. And honestly, for a guy who pitches for the Yankees coming off a Cy Young, 12-1 is still a pretty decent number. Like, I don't think that's a bad number, Matt. Do you?
No, not at all. That's why I chuckle. And it's the 3rd pitcher that we're talking about in this situation. But you brought up something that spawned a thought. In order for Cole to really be in this conversation, I think the Yankees need to win. And I know I'm not telling you anything you don't need to know, but it's kind of like in football, too. If a team is going to be down, you expect them to throw the football, right? You expect there to be more points. You expect them to be chasing the lead. In baseball, too, if you're facing Cole and you're down, you have no choice but to swing, right? You have no choice. Either that or just get punched out looking. So I think the Yankee productivity is tied to Cole going from 222 strikeouts to 280 that he would have needed to win this particular conversation last year. Now, some of these other players we're going to talk about are nice ideas if everyone else, if the wheels fall off of everything else. These next two guys, I think the last one especially, but this next one is intriguing to see what we'll get out of him, what kind of load. It'll be nice to see him finally get his just due, but I'll let you go. Joe?
Yeah, like the next three guys we're going to talk about are definitely the longer shots, but I think you can make a case for all of them. The first one's Tyler Glasnow, who at 126 innings coming off a career high, yay, 120 innings. We should all get really excited. But you should also be excited about the 30+% strikeout rate of Tyler Glasnow. So with Glasnow, it is about health. It is about him just taking the ball every fifth day, because if he does, he becomes a really intriguing guy. Now, he's going as the 42nd player on the board right now in fantasy, but he's also going as a top 10 pitcher off the board, currently being drafted right around 10 or 11 any given day. So there's risk here with Tyler Glasnow, but there's also reward, plus 1,800. That's the number to lead the league in strikeouts for Glasnow, So there's a lot of buzz around the Dodgers, a lot of buzz around Glasnow, a lot of, could this guy become one of the next great pitchers in Major League Baseball? He could be. But again, we haven't seen it yet. There's danger here, there's risk there, but there's also reward at plus 1,800. The next guy on this list, Pablo Lopez. I feel like Pablo Lopez, nobody gives credit to. You know who number 3 in strikeouts last year in Major League Baseball was? This guy, Pablo Lopez at 234. The strikeout rate we haven't seen from him when he pitched for the Marlins. New voices in his ear, a new Pablo Lopez last season, a contract extension for Pablo Lopez. Lopez was fantastic, but because he pitches for the Twins, I feel like nobody really cares publicly, and they should. 234 strikeouts and just 48 walks last year. He was basically exactly the same as Gausman, except for a little bit higher ERA. The whip was nearly identical. The strikeout rate was nearly identical. So once again, if you like Kevin Gausman, I urge you to look at Pablo Lopez at 20-1 because he was right there in that conversation and pitches in a weaker division with a lot less bats that strike out a lot. So just saying, keep an eye on that too. Circumstances do matter. And lastly, Freddie Peralta, one of the best strikeout rates in baseball. And with Freddie Peralta, it is now about, can this guy take that next level? 11.4 strikeouts per 9. That, my friends, is elite level stuff. You're getting this at 25-1. I'm comfortable with Freddie Peralta as an ace of my fantasy team. I want to hit those big offensive bats early in my draft. Then I want to start looking at pitching. Freddie Peralta is one of these guys I circle. So Peralta, Pablo Lopez, Glasnow, all really interesting long shots to lead the league in strikeouts. When we come back, more numbers with the stat of the day.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Soriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It felt during the year that there was a little bit of disconnect with Wilks and Kyle Shanahan. The total points allowed by Steve Wilks' defense the last 3 years before this, head coach for the Cardinals, they gave up the 26th most points. Defensive coordinator for the Browns, 20th most points. And then Carolina, they gave up the 19th most points.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in FST Fantasy Sports. Today, Matt and Joe with you here, shepherding you up the mountain. Sherpa-ing you up? Shepherding you up? Either way, we're getting you up the mountain, and somebody's got to be doing it. It's now time for the stat of the day while I figure out how to use my new tongue, Joe.
Sherping, shepherding, it's all the same. It's about the same, isn't it? I don't know. You ever get stopped? Like, you've traveled around a lot in your life. I imagine at one point Matt Striker was driving a car in Italy or something, and a bunch of sheep had to go by, and you had to stop there and wait for them to cross the road. That feels like a very Matt Striker thing. He was in wine country there, somewhere in Tuscany, and, you know, that's the lifestyle Matt Striker lives. That's just how he rolls. How Bobby Witt rolls is elite. Boy, there's no way to make that segue, so I just did it. Bobby Witt Jr., we mentioned earlier in hour one, so good. How good has he been to start his career? This is how good. No one has been quite as good as Bobby Witt in this department. He's the only player in Major League Baseball history with 50-plus homers and 70-plus steals through his first 2 seasons. And you might be thinking, well, what about a guy like Ricky Henderson? Well, he didn't hit for a lot of power early in his career. What about a guy like Ronald Acuna? Again, didn't quite get to these levels. So the changes in Major League Baseball have really helped some of these young players. But even if you go back to the 80s, it's really tough to find somebody with this power-speed combination that Bobby Witt is giving you. And he's only just getting going. He is still not 25 years old. Bobby Witt Jr. is one of the bright stars in Major League Baseball, and he should be probably the second or third guy off the board in your fantasy leagues. So maybe take a little flyer on Bobby Witt this year for MVP. It's possible. Who knows if Cole Ragans and Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha pitch well? Could the Royals be this year's version of, I don't know, the Pirates in the first half of last year? Good things could happen. Love to see the Royals be good in 2024. Let's think good thoughts for the Kansas City Royals. They deserve it. They need something to cheer about. You should be cheering about hour 2 of FST because we got a whole lot more fantasy to talk about right here. So don't go anywhere. Hour 2 starts right now.